So Ukraine says that in January, they killed more Russian soldiers than Russia was able to recruit, which is only the second time this has happened since the full-scale invasion began in 2022, and notably happened during a month with fewer and smaller Russian assaults. I mean, we might see some absolutely shocking numbers in the next few months as the weather clears and operational tempo picks back up. Now, the Ukrainian unmanned systems forces put out a note saying the balance of occupiers for January is negative. They say in January 2026, 22,000 Russians were mobilized or contracted into the military, whereas 30,618 were verified as being killed on camera by UAV units of the Ukrainian Defense Forces. Important note there. So Ukraine has this point system where they award points to different units based off their effectiveness at eliminating Russian soldiers, Russian military equipment, so on and so forth. A big part of that, I think probably the most important part of that, is accurately tracking battle damage assessments or the results of the strike. So to accumulate any points and verify the results, Ukraine has to submit video evidence from another drone that strike drone actually achieved the desired results. So when you see the number of tanks that were destroyed versus damaged, enemy personnel killed versus wounded, all of that supposedly is captured on camera before it can be recorded. Now, not all of that video is made public. It just isn't. I mean, we have a tiny fraction of what is actually happening day in and day out. It's not even close, like single-digit percentages low, like 1-2% maybe is the amount of drone footage that we have available in a public setting. So when you look at publicly available reports, those numbers are, of course, going to be lower. Now, to give you an idea of the discrepancy here, Andrew Perpetua does an incredible job tracking this stuff day in and day out, looking through countless videos, and he confirmed in January 5,957 Russians verified killed in drone footage. So there's about a 6x, 5x discrepancy there between the two. But again, something I think we lose sight of in all of this. I can't verify the 30,000 number. The way Ukraine is putting it out here is saying we can verify it. Something we lose sight of with the volume of footage coming out day in and day out is that we are just seeing a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of what is actually happening on the battlefield. For a little bit of context here, there were 140,000 combat missions flown by a single Ukrainian drone unit in January. Like, you couldn't look through all that footage if you wanted to. I mean, it could be playing on your computer nonstop all day, and you'd run out of time. You have to run it on like 4x and probably still wouldn't even get to it. So Magyar Birds, one of the top units in the Ukrainian Unmanned Systems Forces, said they ran an average of 4,500 missions per day. That averaged 3 missions per minute during the month of January. Non-stop. Now, some of those are reconnaissance drones. You know, they go up, they look around for some stuff, and they come back. Some are bombers that do the same. They go out, carry out their missions, and come back. Plenty of those are one way. They're either interceptors bringing down Russian drones or flying into Russian targets. That includes the short-range FPVs all the way up to the long-range deep strike munitions. But I just don't think very many people understand the quantity of drones overhead in Ukraine minute by minute right now. You all probably do because you're watching these videos and keeping up with the war. But even then, 3 missions per minute during the course of January for one Ukrainian drone unit is shocking. And I just don't think many people that are maybe keeping up with the war from the sidelines or check in every so often would understand how drastically warfare has changed. Now, I mentioned that it's notable that this 30,000 number came in January. And this is amidst the Ukrainian defense minister setting a goal for 50,000 Russian soldiers killed every month in 2026. So on the one hand, you could say, well, they missed their mark in month 1. But 30,000 is a shocking number of enemy soldiers to kill in 1 month. And in talking with a couple different Ukrainian units and soldiers in recent months, they didn't think that 50,000 was that big of a stretch. They suggested that 25, 30, 35 is kind of the norm. So with a little bit more focus on Russian soldiers, they shouldn't have an issue hitting that. And what's interesting with the 30,000 number in January is weather conditions have been awful for the last month. And while we do still see Russian soldiers traversing, I mean, these are suicide missions, to be blunt, right? And we've talked about this in previous videos, but Russia is having to drop off their soldiers, depending on the area, 5, 10, 15, 20 kilometers from the front line. The soldiers then dismount and move across on foot, trying to find a gap in the Ukrainian lines, and they move from house to house or trench to trench, bunker to bunker, trying to move forward and infiltrate through Ukrainian lines where they can set up a more defensible position, and then ideally, from their perspective, more soldiers come forward and join that, and then they've got a squad that can carry out kind of infiltration attacks, if you will, behind the Ukrainian lines, start to threaten some Ukrainian drone positions and logistics routes, things like that. That is not warm. It is sub-zero temperatures across Ukraine right now at night. It's every single night dropping below zero. So it doesn't matter how well equipped these guys are. They are having to not just dodge drones during the day, but then at night try to find shelter, assuming they've made it anywhere forward at all and haven't been spotted. They have to find shelter but can't start a fire, right? And try to just survive in this weather is a feat unto itself. So again, the Russian soldiers assaulting right now in some of this open terrain is just a straight suicide mission. They're not moving towards some like warming facility at the other end of the line. It's a matter of either being killed by Ukrainian drones, being killed in an assault on Ukrainian positions, or quite frankly, a lot of them are probably succumbing to cold weather injuries and dying, frostbite and hypothermia. And we're not going to see very many of those on camera because they're just going to look like a dead Russian soldier. So in turn, we have seen a decrease in the volume of Russian attacks playing out. It's just lower right now than it is when it's not completely covered in ice and snow. So January saw a decrease in the number of assaults. It saw a decrease in the volume in those assaults. And a notable piece here as well on the Ukrainian side, well, it affects both, but in this context, a shorter range and a shorter battery life for the Ukrainian drones. We were talking with some operators the other day where they said that when you get into sub-zero temperatures, that is so cold that in some cases it can sap the battery life by 50%. So if you're used to having 20 minutes, you've got 10, which directly translates to the range that munition has in the battlefield. I mean, if you expect that you've got 15-kilometer range, it might only be 7. Think about that on top of all of this. Fewer Russians moving around, smaller assaults, shorter range with a lot of the drones, and 30,000 marked as killed in January. Again, when those conditions clear out in the next few months, we might see some absolutely shocking numbers in terms of Russians killed and wounded. Now, again, the big talk right now is that Ukraine is kind of pushing this goal towards 50,000 Russian soldiers killed per month. And a lot of what we've seen on the Russian side with their dedicated drone units, Rubicon is kind of the one that gets a lot of attention. They have stood up a number of other units at this point. They've been more focused on equipment. And it hasn't been close. I mean, when you look at the Rubicon Telegram channel and they mark their wins for the day, if you will, it's all equipment. That's what they're prioritizing over and over and over again. It's definitely a difference in how these two sides are approaching the war at the front. There might be a bit of a change, though. It's possible Russia is looking at this and deciding that the Ukrainian method of eliminating personnel should be a higher priority. Robert Magyar, the commander of the Ukrainian unmanned systems forces, put out a note saying that the general staff of the Russian armed forces are offering a payment of 25,000 rubles, roughly $325, for each confirmed Ukrainian soldier killed by drones. He quoted this order as saying, based on the current situation, the general staff of the Russian armed forces has set the task for the groups of unmanned systems to concentrate their efforts on the destruction of enemy live forces, means of countering unmanned systems, and the destruction of control points for their UAVs. At the same time, in order to motivate the personnel of the unmanned systems units, it is proposed to establish payments in the amount of 25,000 rubles for every FPV strike that leads to the destruction of one enemy serviceman, provided there is objective control of the hit from another UAV. That is like one for one the exact system that Ukraine has set up under this Army of Drones program, where they are tracking the progress and requiring video evidence for each one of these. We'll see if this actually comes to fruition, but it looks like Russia might be following that same path, prioritizing, in this case, Ukrainian soldiers over the equipment, logistics, and communications that the Russian version, Rubicon and others of the unmanned systems forces have been prioritizing to date. Now, we mentioned briefly the medium to long-range strikes still being carried out by Ukraine across the front. We got a new video here released by the Ukrainian GUR, specifically the unit Ghosts, talking about striking a number of Russian air defense assets a good ways back from the front. In the video here, and they didn't say exactly where this was. Traditionally, we've seen them operate pretty heavily in Crimea. I didn't see a location on this one, but in the video, you'll see the destruction, or at least the striking, of a Pantsir air defense system, 2 different Tors, as well as one of the Tor transport loading vehicles, and then a couple different radar systems. We've got the Nebo M radar complex, and then the Protivnik, no way I got that right, GE. So the medium to long-range strikes are continuing across the front. Now, quick fundraiser update. We kicked one off, the biggest one I've ever been a part of, with Car for Ukraine, trying to secure an entire fleet of new vehicles for the Seraphims. This is the new drone unit being stood up within the 104th Territorial Defense Brigade. Right now, we're at 35,000 euros towards the 97,000 euro goal. First off, check out this patch. Pretty cool, I think. Pretty unique. I don't know. I got to get one of those. We'll talk to the Car for Ukraine people, but there's patches based off the different amounts you donate. But I wanted to quickly play a couple videos from these guys, my friends over at the 104th, thanking you for your support and helping them stand up this new battalion of drone units. The first one I'm just going to play. You can read the aspects there, but the second piece I'm going to read out loud just for the people that are listening and not necessarily watching. Here we go.
Бажаємо здоров'я, дорогий Престоне.
Вітаємо тебе, дорогий Престоне.
Дорогий Престоне Стюарте.
Дорогий Престоне, ми бійці 2-го БППС 104-ї бригади ТРО.
From Ukrainian soldiers, thank you for your support, Preston Stewart.
Другий батальйон безпілотних систем. Привіт зі сходу України.
Бажаю здоров'я, дорогі Престоне. Бажаю здоров'я всім підписникам YouTube-каналу Престона Стюарта. Друзі, я командир 2-го батальйону безпілотних систем 104-ї окремої бригади гори.
This is our land of Ukraine. This is Ukraine that firmly stands on the positions of democracy. This is a country that firmly stands on the positions of freedom of speech, human rights, freedom of religious expression. These are the key principles for which we fight. And we will not let any authoritarian regime come and conquer us. We are the shield of Europe. We are the shield of Western civilization. And we ask you to support us. As of today, among our fundraisers for vehicles, pickups like these, we deliver goods, we deliver our crews. It is an effective logistics tool. Support us and you will see. See how we work, and you'll love it. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the American people. So again, for those interested and able, that link will be in the description and pinned comment below. But really cool campaign we've got going there. Proud to be a part of that one. Now, last night there was a pretty significant Russian drone and missile attack carried out against the Ukrainian energy infrastructure once again. According to the Ukrainian Air Force, they say Russia launched a combined attack on critical infrastructure in Ukraine using drones, air-launched, and ground-based missiles. In total, they tracked 447 total munitions. They say, according to preliminary data, they were able to shoot down or intercept 406 total targets. They say they shot down 24 out of 39 missiles and 382 out of 408 drones of various types. The Russian Ministry of Defense, in their announcement, said that this was a response to terrorist attacks launched by Ukraine against civilian infrastructure. They say they delivered a massive strike with high-precision, long-range naval and air-based weapons, including Kinzhal air ballistic hypersonic missiles, as well as unmanned aerial vehicles against energy and transport infrastructure facilities used for the benefit of the armed forces of Ukraine, enterprises of the Ukrainian defense industry that produce attack UAVs, as well as store and pre-launch areas at military airfields. Russia says the goals of the strike were achieved. All of the assigned targets were engaged. Ukrainian President Zelensky, addressing the strike, said the main target was the power grid, generation, and distribution substations. He said, quote, "Every day, Russia could choose real diplomacy, but it chooses new strikes. It's important that everyone who supports the trilateral negotiations respond to this. Moscow must be deprived of the opportunity to pressure Ukraine with cold weather. For this, we need missiles for the Patriot, NASAMS, and other systems. Each batch helps us to get through this winter." And again, frigid temperatures in Ukraine. It sounds like, from what I've seen, that there was pretty significant damage done to the energy infrastructure overnight. This is exclusively coming from Russian channels, but they're saying that a number of power stations were forced to shut down following these strikes across Ukraine. And again, when you look at the map, there were strikes carried out everywhere. I mean, they hit a lot of major cities over the course of the last 12 hours. Now, quickly, I want to jump to the negotiations right now because we don't have a lot of updates there. It sounds like they are still ongoing, which is no surprise. They've been ongoing for a while here. But Ukraine voiced some concerns earlier today that I hadn't heard quite yet, which is a worry that the United States and Russia might be working on side deals that involve Ukraine without involving Ukraine. Ukrainian President Zelensky, in speaking with reporters, said, quote, "Given the potential risks, the Ukrainian delegation conveyed the position that if there are any bilateral agreements between Russia and the United States, the provisions related to Ukraine cannot contradict the Constitution." He added that the United States is proposing that the war be brought to an end before the start of the summer and is likely to apply pressure on the parties in line with that timeline. He suggested the push is linked to domestic political dynamics in the United States, likely referring to the midterm elections scheduled for November 2026. Quote, "Intelligence showed me the so-called Dmitriev package that he presented in the United States. It amounts to around $12 trillion, Zelensky said, describing it as a proposed framework for large-scale U.S.-Russia economic cooperation. So it's going to be interesting to see, from the Ukrainian perspective, they believe that the United States is going to be layering pressure on them and Russia to come to a deal before summer. I don't think that's crazy to say. I wish we didn't look at major geopolitical issues like this through the lens of an election cycle, but that's probably how a lot of people are viewing it. So it would not be all that surprising if there's a drive to try to have some sort of agreement in hand. Now, based off of how this is played with other conflicts, that doesn't necessarily mean that the war is over. It doesn't mean that everything has been agreed upon. If we're looking at this from a purely domestic political nature, it's entirely possible that some sort of agreement could be penned with just Russia, and then we could use that to say, look, we're making progress. We just have this, details, these one or two other things we're trying to get to. Those one or two other things, of course, being territorial control and security guarantees, which, as of today, don't seem any closer than they've ever been. But, of course, the concern here from Ukraine is that this $12 trillion number being thrown around, it's a ridiculous number. I want to say that, all right? That's just like a made-up number. That doesn't correlate to anything. You'd have to get to, years and years and years. You have to be forward counting decades of U.S.-Russia cooperation to end up around a $12 trillion number. And I'm not even sure you could get to it at that point. So let's set that aside. We have seen numbers like that thrown around in recent months. It tends to get a lot of press, tends to get a lot of attention in the White House. If I was Zelensky, I would also be a little bit nervous seeing Russia float something like that, especially as we come up on the summer and midterm season. Now, yesterday there was some pretty interesting news coming out of Russia, that a general was, an assassination was attempted on a Russian general, specifically Vladimir Alexeyev, who is the first deputy head of Russia's main intelligence directorate, the GRU. So what we know right now is that an unknown attacker, and this is according to a couple different sources in the Russian media, an unknown attacker fired several shots in his residential building. He fled the scene. They said that the general is alive and now awake after surgery. It sounds like Russia says there's no concern to his life at this point. He does appear that he's going to survive this one. The Russian foreign ministry, accused Ukraine of being behind this. Ukraine hasn't said anything at this point. They have, of course, carried out a number of high-level killings inside of Russia. It would not be surprising if Ukraine was behind this, but again, nothing from the Ukrainian government. Russia earlier today did mention that they have someone in custody. They said they apprehended him in Dubai. So I guess the story is that he carried out this shooting, fled the scene, immediately flew to Dubai, and they tracked him down there and arrested him. So we'll see what comes of that, if he actually is the guy. And what actually comes of this. Again, this is a pretty very senior official. A lot of the Russian channels right now are concerned about how somebody this senior doesn't have a security detail, how anybody could get this close to one of the top generals in the Russian military and just pull out a gun and start shooting. So this will be an interesting one to follow, and wouldn't be surprised if we see more attempts on senior Russian official lives like this in the coming months. This has been all things considered, a pretty effective tactic for Ukraine to go after some of these leadership figures. I don't really see any reason that they're going to stop now as the war continues. But that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.